All right, we are here with DC mayoral candidate Kenyan McDuffie. First question I wanted to ask, there's some interesting dynamics playing out in this race, and one of them we see in polling is that black voters in DC are more likely to support you, white voters more likely to support Janice Lewis George, and I'm interested, why do you think that is?
I don't think that is. I actually think the polls got it wrong. I think that I've got widespread support across the District of Columbia. How do I know? Because I've knocked on thousands of doors personally and talked to voters directly. And what I know is they want somebody who on day one is best prepared to fight back against Trump and a hostile federal administration and deliver a city that is safer and more affordable, that has a government that's accountable to people across the District of Columbia so that it works better for businesses and people across our city.
I wonder though, we're at a bar call here, and I do see there's a lot of white folks attending here. Is this part of an outreach to try to reach a part of DC that maybe you have been struggling with?
Oh no, I'm not struggling. I'm not struggling with any demographic in the District of Columbia. In fact, if you talk to some of these folks, they'll tell you they already voted for me. All right, so polls show a moment in time. I don't bank winning campaigns on what polls say. The way that you show up for voters is the way that I show up as a former letter carrier. I knock on doors, I shake hands and look people in the eye and I ask for their support. And we got a lot of support across demographics in the District of Columbia because I'm going to be a mayor that governs in the same way that I've led as the council. It's build a broad coalition, invite people in by laying out a vision that makes this city more racially equitable, more socially just, and more economically inclusive.
What do you make of the other fault lines that have possibly emerged in this race? And one of them is that people that were born in D.C. may be more likely to support your candidacy. People that are newer arrivals supporting Janice Lewis George. Do you have any theories of why that might be?
I don't. I would say this. People know that I've been a fighter for fairness and justice across the District of Columbia and been the greatest champion for making our prosperity as a city more inclusive. And so I've gotten support of long-term residents who have felt like the things that they've seen, the prosperity over the last couple of decades, hasn't included them. And so I've been fighting to make sure that they see themselves reflected in the future prosperity of the District of Columbia. At the same token, I've been very welcoming to everybody. Whether you've been here for 30 years or you've been here for 3 months, I'm going to be a mayor for you in the same way that I've been a council member for the entire city. I'm running to fight and deliver for all D.C. By all, I mean all 700,000 residents across all 8 wards.
Well, I just wonder if you think newer arrivals to D.C., people that are younger, people more economically advantaged, have a more idealistic view of politics that might play into Janice Lewis George's democratic socialism.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure about that. What I know is most people care about a few things that government must do to keep them in this city. Keep you safe, invest in education and quality schools, and create jobs by investing in the businesses like Right Proper and other small businesses across the District of Columbia. These are the places that drive economic growth, and what residents and voters across DC know, I'm the mayor who on day one understands how to balance their $21 billion budget in a way that drives economic growth with guardrails that protects people from displacement.
What are you going to do about the epidemic of kids on scooters riding the wrong way in traffic?
I wouldn't call it an epidemic. I think there's some kids
Have you ever been to Southwest?
I've been everywhere across the District of Columbia, and there are kids who make, I think, decisions that demonstrate that their brains aren't fully developed, and we need to show up for them and explain to them that there are serious consequences, safety-wise, when you do things like that, but also make sure that they understand the resources, programming, supports, and services that already exist in the District of Columbia. Access to information is a real barrier for a lot of families, and I'm going to make sure that we have a mayor who's going to fight to eliminate the barriers, to make sure everybody has access to information, and show up and meet people where they are, so that those kids don't have to make those type of decisions, whether it's riding a scooter backwards or the wrong way on the street, or it's showing up in hundreds in teen takeovers in places like Navy Yard and Fort Stanton and U Street. I'm going to show up in their communities in a way no mayor ever has before and help them understand the opportunity that exists in this city and make a connection to programs and services that are specifically designed to empower them and to give them the opportunities, much like the opportunity I got when I was a teenager growing up in this city.
There's a lot of talk about how programs could possibly help mitigate some of these problems we've seen with teen takeovers and the like. I was a teenager. You were a teenager. Do you really think having programs is going to stop kids from wanting to get out and cause a ruckus?
I think that kids will be kids.
Yeah.
And it's up to adults, particularly elected officials, to show up for them and demonstrate there are accountability and there's opportunity. When I think about safe communities across the District of Columbia, regardless of your ward or where you live, your zip code or how much money you have or who you know, it's about accountability and opportunity. Hold people accountable when they commit crimes, and you do that swiftly and certainly, but you also have to usher in opportunity with a greater sense of urgency, as if somebody's called 911. I'm showing up with opportunity, and if kids decide they don't want it, and their parents at the table or other caring adults need to be at the table to make sure that they understand there are real serious consequences when you don't follow the law. But here's the thing. Most kids and teenagers across D.C. are doing exactly what their parents have asked them to do. They're law-abiding, they're going to school, they're following the rules. And so I don't want to malign an entire population of youth in the District of Columbia because most of them are doing the right thing. There are a few knuckleheads who are descending on places like Navy Yard, and it's not just D.C. residents, right? It's kids from other parts of our region as well, but we have to deal with it in a way that's thoughtful. I'm saying treat the teen takeovers like the public safety emergency that they are, and put the teen curfew in place as a temporary tool while also on a parallel track ushering in opportunity to address the root causes. And guess what? I'm not just saying this because I'm running for mayor. I've actually delivered legislation, programs, and policies as a council member over 13 and a half years that have done just that. Showed up in communities, met with neighborhoods, and ushered in resources to those places like the NEAR Act, like comprehensive juvenile justice reform, like baby bonds, like the first guaranteed basic income program. I've actually provided real solutions to those intractable issues that are frustrating young folks and frustrating the adults who want to help them as well.
You probably saw this Washington Post poll that came out the other day and said about half of D.C. Democrats support socialism. What does that say to you? What do you think of socialism?
What I think of is that most people across the District of Columbia have shared values when it comes to safety, when it comes to education, when it comes to being able to have a job where you can earn a living wage and take care of yourself and your family, right? It doesn't matter when it comes to party. In the District of Columbia, we have values that are very important to us, and I share those values with District of Columbia residents across this city, across wards, across demographics that say we need a mayor who's going to fight back against Donald Trump and Republicans in Congress to deliver a city where we protect our home rule, but also are showing up to make sure that we're safe, that kids get a quality education regardless of where they live in their communities, and that we are growing an economy that protects people against displacement.
Speaking of fighting against Donald Trump, how do you balance wanting to confront the administration with also not putting a target on our backs that causes more turmoil in the district?
Yeah, well, I recognize that Washington, D.C. is not like any other city. We're not New York City, we're not San Francisco, we're not Chicago. We are unique, which gives us benefits in terms of our proximity to the federal government. It just so happens that we have somebody occupying the White House who doesn't care about Washington, D.C. So I'm going to make sure that we are fighting back where necessary. I'm going to rescind the executive order that allows cooperation between our Metropolitan Police Department and ICE, because
isn't that just picking a big fight with the Trump administration, though, and they're going to react even more forcefully?
Well, I'm willing to pick a fight when it comes to protecting our residents, when it comes to keeping people safe, when it comes to fairness and justice. I'm drawing a very bright line because my entire career in public safety and public service has been about ensuring that we bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice. Everything I've done as a council member, as a former civil rights attorney in President Obama's Justice Department, and as a former prosecutor in Prince George's County, it's been about ensuring a city that is more fair and more just. And I'm going to be the mayor that delivers a city that is more fair and more just.
You brought up New York. I wonder what you think of the job that Zohran Mamdani is doing in New York City.
I'm focused on Washington. I'm focused on Washington, D.C.
Are you a fan of his, though?
I'm going to be a D.C. first mayor who places Washingtonians first and make sure that we grow our city, right? If there are best practices that are happening around the country that could be applicable to D.C., I'll look at them. Like Charlotte has a great one-stop coordinating for business permitting and other things. We're going to do one-stop business permitting, cut permitting times in half in Washington, D.C. I look at what Austin's doing when it comes to innovation, and we're going to make sure we're lifting up our world-class universities and hospitals telling a story about innovation and creating jobs that connects our residents.
You don't want to answer that question, but if people in D.C. think Zohran Mamdani is doing a good job and want someone to emulate that here in D.C., why would they not vote for Janice Lewis-George?
Well, here's a concern that I have with Democratic Socialists and Janice Lewis-George's platform. It is a party where she has pledged allegiance to an agenda that says that she won't engage with certain Jewish people in Washington, D.C. It's also a party that says that they want to abolish the police and prisons. And those values are not consistent with the majority of Washington, D.C. residents. And so that concerns me deeply because I know that most D.C. residents want community-oriented policing in their neighborhoods so that places don't feel over-policed, but that you have police officers that show up before somebody calls 911.
You said she wouldn't engage with certain Jewish people. You mean she doesn't want the support of Zionists, and you think that's a stance that she shouldn't take?
What I'm saying is she should have to defend her stance. I'm running to be mayor of Washington, D.C. I'm not running to be Secretary of State. I'm not running to be any foreign policy advisor. I'm running to protect our residents of the District of Columbia because right now, too many people are living on the margins when it comes to the DOGE cuts that have cost thousands of D.C. residents their jobs, hundreds of thousands across America. And I'm running to fight back against Trump and the people who are making those types of decisions. And I'm not getting caught up in things that don't apply to Washington, D.C. residents. People want a mayor that's going to fight for them and focus on them, and that's the kind of mayor I'm going to be.
Do you want to see? Do you want to see the National Guard gone? Is that not just a donation of free security guards by the federal government?
Well, here's the problem with ICE, HSI, and the National Guard. They're not trained police officers. They don't have the experience or training that the Metropolitan Police Department has. I have a unique lens through which I view policing. It's because I'm a former criminal prosecutor who's fought crime and delivered justice for victims, but I'm also a former civil rights attorney who worked in President Obama's Justice Department, who traveled the country investigating police departments where there were allegations of a pattern of practice of misconduct, where there are allegations of unconstitutional policing. I reformed systems like that, which is why when I got to the Council of the District of Columbia, I authored the NEAR Act that made MPD's policing more transparent. And I'm going to be a mayor who hires a police chief that restores a culture of accountability and transparency in the Metropolitan Police Department at a time where the public's trust in MPD has been shaken. It's been shaken because of the leadership that is engaged in a crime stats scandal and because you have ICE and HSI and the National Guard on our streets. I'm going to get rid of that and get back to the types of policing that residents across the District of Columbia want, where officers are invested in neighborhoods, where they show up, they get to know the senior citizens sitting on the porch who's been here for 30 or 40 years. But they also get to know the young folks who are playing on the playground, and they know them by name. They know the shop owners by name, right? Because they're showing up. They're invested in the people who they're sworn to protect and serve. That's the kind of mayor I'm going to be, and I'm bringing experience in that way. But I'm also bringing experience that, in addition to understanding what fairness and justice looks like, Drew, I also know what injustice looks like. Having been a teenager in this city when there was a crack epidemic and a war on drugs, and having been arrested as a teenager in Washington, D.C. I'm going to ensure we are a city that spreads fairness and justice across all 8 wards in a way that no mayor has ever ensured before.
All right. D.C. mayoral candidate Kenyan McDuffie, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one.